Welcome to the Paranormal Pendle podcast, coming to you from the heart of Pendle Witch Country in the northwest of England. My name is Craig Bryant, author, investigator and collector of stories. Join me as we take a journey into the paranormal, UFO sightings, cryptozoology and big cats. This is the Paranormal Pendle podcast. Welcome to episode 24 of Paranormal Pendle, broadcasting to the UK Paranormal Radio Network at paukradio.com. My guest on this episode is author, investigator, broadcaster and speaker, Paul Sinclair. Paul, did I get all of your talents in there in that sentence?
You did, and it sounds a little bit strange when it's said like that, because... author, broadcaster, presenter. Yeah. It's nuts, honestly, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's all totally alien to everything I've done for the biggest part of my working life, which were knocking nails in wood. Yeah,
can you quite believe how it's all it's all blown up into this huge phenomena, really, if we can call it that is your truth proof books, your live speaking that you do, the fact that you're a really sought after guest on the circuit. I mean, how does it feel to be?
It's bizarre. It really is, because I'm live speaking. Now, speaking with you, Craig, and other people, the podcasts, and that don't bother me. I used to get kind of nervous if you were on Coast to Coast or Midnight in the Desert, because you realise you've got 3 hours here. Are you going to be able to fill this 3 hours? But I don't mean they don't bother me. That's a bit blasé, but they don't bother me that much now. The conferences do. I turn lots of conferences down. I won't say every conference in UK, but I've turned a lot of them down. Let's put it that road. And that's not because the conference organisers or the people aren't worthy, because they are. It's just me. Do you know? And America, World UFO Congress. I've turned. I'm trying to think of correct pronunciation for it, but it's been in America, and I've turned that down. And another one, and it's just not me. I'm not. I feel as alien, even if I'm sort of good with the gift of the gab. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
but it's got to be right. I must be doing something right, because
absolutely
it entertains a few people. Let's put it that way.
Well, I can guarantee, Paul, that you are doing everything right from where I'm sitting. The body of work that you've done has been fantastic. As I said, you're really in demand. I believe you are doing a convention. Is it in May at Blackpool?
I've got two, actually. I've got the first one is May, and that's in Hull. That's the Outer Limits conference for Chris Evers, and I've done that now. This will be fourth time. I only did it initially because Chris has been a friend for 30 years. Well, between 25 and 30 years. So I said I would do it. So I'm doing it again this year for Chris, and then I spoke at the Awakening prior to COVID, when it was at, I think, Manchester, weren't it? And now it's at Blackpool this year. So, yeah, I'm going to speak at the Awakening again this year. And I'll be speaking about a subject I didn't think I'd even be remotely interested in. Never thought. Everything that we're talking about, Craig, from my subject to what you research, it's all a little bit fringe, isn't it? Let's face it. It's not something that we discuss like if we were sat in a bar or in a cafe, or with a group of people, and the bulk of the people would go, "Oh, did you watch that detective series on TV last night? That was interesting." You wouldn't start talking about the Black Monks of Accrington. And that's, do you know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't be talking about UFOs over at sea to people. And there's a cutoff between, I wouldn't say real life, because this is obviously real life, but the people that you can associate with and share these stories and experiences with. It's a kind of limited kind of genre, but it's expanding. It is getting better, and I think that's partly our job, your job, my job, all of us, to try and get the subject out there in a way that would say the public who aren't as interested as us can maybe just think, well, there might be a bit of plausibility in this. This might be
a bit more accessible.
Yeah, it's a long way around. I just spent 5 minutes saying that, and you just in that.
I mean, I actually, it's interesting about talking about being in being in a social situation and just talking to people, and the vast majority of them wouldn't want to talk about the subjects that we're interested in. But do you not find that occasionally you have a friend or a family member, somebody you've known for a long, long time, that will suddenly actually show a real interest?
That you do, yeah, and then it's kind of bites them, and they're as avidly to a point where they're asking questions and things, and you're thinking, oh, I'm sick of talking about this. That happens. Do you know what I mean? And then what I thought you were going to say, Craig, is that you'll be in a conversation and there's actually somebody within that conversation who just wants to speak to you, pull you to one side and go, do you know something? I don't want to say it amongst these people, but something really interesting and like something that profound that's happened in their own life or the dad's life or so it's there. I think it's there for everybody. I think everybody at some stage or some point in their life has been touched by the phenomena. Yeah. It's just to what degree do you sort of jump down the rabbit hole kind of thing and start delving and looking deeper. And I suppose life dictates that. If you've got a lifestyle that's absolutely 100% full on, children forging away in life, you can't always devote the time that you want to even something that you might be passionate about or interested in. And there's a time and a place for everything, and I had this interest, Craig, all the way through, I would have thought from childhood, not realizing how entrenched I was because of things that happened to me as a child. But then, I don't know, I got married when I was 19. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I don't mind saying. I mean, I'm still married to the same woman, and I'm sure I drive her mad. But the point is, there was a period then from 19 to probably 28, 30, where things were happening, but actual life, earning a living and everything else took precedence over, of course, getting involved or going out at night searching for things and looking. So the time and a place. Yeah,
which you can't do. I mean, you've got a family. You've got is it a couple of daughters?
4 daughters.
4 daughters, right? Okay. Yeah. My sympathies. I bet that was fun.
Well, do you know? Believe it or not, my wife. I know we're supposed to be talking about unexplained, but Mary was the authority with the girls. It would always wait till your dad gets home. You're in trouble and all that, but she was the one that put her foot down. And if there were ever any punishment, and they were never really punished, it was Mary that dished it out, because I can't ever remember really. I can get angry with them, but I've never lifted my hands to my girls. Do you know what I mean?
No, I've certainly lost my temper with my lad every now and then, but we have a bit of a shouting match. I mean, we had an interesting conversation on your last live stream about that, so we'll leave that till we did. I
don't think we better go there. I thought I would insult.
Probably not. No. No, I just think it's interesting that people I think do find us as people interesting. What motivates us, why we do what we do, why we're interested in what we're interested in. And I think it's nice sometimes just to open up and just let people know that actually we are passionate about what we believe in. We enjoy what we do. We enjoy the research. We enjoy the writing. We enjoy talking to other like-minded people. And quite rightly, as you said, we enjoy talking to people who perhaps we wouldn't necessarily have thought would be interested in the subject, and it's a nice surprise when they are. Let's just move a bit sideways then, and I wanted really to talk to you about your latest book, Truth Proof 4, because it's obviously now getting into a really sort of series, isn't it? When you think about it, when you look at it that way, I mean, when you finished the first one, did you ever think you'd be writing a fourth?
No, I thought it were a mammoth achievement doing the first. I top at house. Well, as it was then, I've converted this spot now. There's reams and reams of writing and notes of the things that have happened throughout the years, and that were going to be for night people, which isn't part of the Truth Proof books. It's unexplained phenomena, but that were part of that. But over that length of time, I've been collecting UFO reports. speaking to people. I think what we need to be good at, or try to be good at as researchers, if that's the word, is getting best out at witness, making witness feel comfortable, because what in a lot of instances, they're leaving the self vulnerable to an unscrupulous researcher. You've seen, we all know that they exist. We all know they're out there. They get a little bit of information and they either go to a local paper with it and sort of put these people in a compromising position, or go to a bigger paper. And before they know it, then their name is associated with it. It's them poor devils that have actually given information out. And I know we've jumped from what you were saying, but I think as researchers, we've got to, witnesses are key, and witnesses are primarily need to be treated with utmost respect. That's the way I look at it. And I think that's probably why I get so many people coming to me, offering little bits of stories and information. Because usually the first thing I say is, do you want me to change your name? I said, because the person reading it won't know whether you're called Eric Smith or Dan Brown. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mind doing it. I've not got an ounce of problem with changing people's names and just twisting things. So long as I get the core of the story is accurate. There's a story at Flamborough. And I've changed it considerably. And it's some security guards on cliff tops that witnessed a UFO landing. But because of the nature of their job, it would have instantly exposed them to their company they worked for, and they just didn't want that known, you know.
Yes.
So I changed it, but the core of the story, the actual truth of the story, is correct. So, but I don't know. I mean, it's you get a little bit of a buzz when somebody comes to you with a bit of new information. You know, when we've been making Wolflands, we've sort of, I don't know, we've been doing the Gamekeeper, we've been doing the lads from Rotherham, we've sort of got all these people that we're talking to, which are in the book as well. They're in Truth 4. But then just out at blue, somebody will ring you and you're off on another chase up northeast, up near Skinning Grove. We've got right at the end of the film, we've got a fabulous account from a guy in one of the tiny fishing villages called Skinning Grove. Right. Incidentally, there's a bit of folklore attached to Skinning Grove. Apparently, they found a mermaid at Skinning Grove once years ago, and it's not the thing I'm going to be looking into, but I found it interesting when you're doing a bit of research on area. But this guy saw something unusual as a young man, and it's just stuck with him ever since. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, you just don't know what's going to be thrown at you, do you?
No. What did he see? Can you?
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah, he was 14 at the time, so a young guy, and he's about 30 now, 32. First name's Sam. He hasn't changed his name. That's his name. He's gone on film. He's given his account. He said, it's a little village, and there's no dense woodlands, but there's a small wood on the outskirts of the village. He says, and all the children would play, just, I don't know, we've all done it, hide and seek and all sorts of games. I mean, they might not do it today because it's all iPads, in it, and computer games. However, that's what they were doing. He said there was a disused railway cabin by the side of I'm not sure if he said football field, but a bit of open land, probably played football on it, but I don't think a true football field in that effect.
Yeah.
He said there were an all-in roof. He said, in odd times, he said, we'd light a fire inside it. Doesn't seem right clever, that, right? Lighting a fire inside a wooden hut, does it? But no. They would. So he said, basically, as kids, he says, we'd light a fire inside it. He said, anyway, we're playing this game of hide and seek. He says, there's all village kids are involved in it. Let's assume there's 8 or 9. He didn't say an exact number. He said, and I got tucked away in a little bit of undergrowth in this wood. So there's nettles and brambles around me, and I'm in it. There's just trees. He says, it's not dense. It's dark. And I know that they're searching for, not just me, but for others. He says, and I'm sat there. He says, and it's all tucked away. He said, and I heard a twig break. He said, and I just thought, it could be one of my friends. Could be. He says, and I heard another twig break. He said, that's what it sounded like, just snap. He said, and then I heard a loud crack. He said, and I just looked. He says, and it sat there about 6 or 8 foot away from me. This huge thing. He says, have you ever seen a gorilla when they sit, the silverbacks, when they're sitting, that stands with their arms down? So I think he said he got small ears. So he's not talking about, primarily we're talking about the werewolf, the dogman phenomenon with Wolflands, but we've included this account. He said, and it's monstrous. He said, honestly, he said, I think its shoulders were as wide as what I am tall. He said, it was huge, this thing. And all I can see is its black outline. I can't see teeth. I can't see eyes. He said, but there's a bit of moonlight, not a full moon. He says, and he said, have you ever seen a dog when it's heard a noise and it's curious and it kind of does that with its head?
Yeah,
he says, when I looked at it, it did that. He said, and I'm just sort of stunned, for a moment. He said, and then I'm just off on my toes and I'm running like mad, thinking I'm running for my life. There's no aggression from this thing. What's interesting, and I don't know how this ties in with story, but it's just another quirky bit. So he's just left that and he's running for the railway hut. As he's running for the railway hut, a lot of the young people that were his friends are running out of the railway hut screaming, claiming that there was something walking on the roof. And he says to this day, they've said it was me. He said, but it weren't. He said, and he's on end at Philmont, tagged on end. He said, I'd give everything. He says, I think he's a plumber now, betrayed. He said, I'd give all my wages that I've earned from earliest of times to now to know what that was. He's that passionate. He says, I don't mean he said, I think about it every day. He didn't say anything like that, but it's never left his mind. So you've just got one little cameo of probably, what would we say, from hearing the twig snap to seeing it and just running away. We've probably got a 20-second sighting that's just had an absolute profound effect on his life. Yeah. It really has, to the point where he stepped over the threshold and risks a bit of ridicule and wants to share this story. And that's the short one. There's a few short ones in the documentary, but nevertheless, they are interesting. I mean, we're starting to gather some accounts from mountain bikers, which won't go in. There's not enough room. We're up to about an hour and a half now, and we don't want to keep adding work to it. It's becoming a bit of a monster, really, in itself. Getting all information and getting it edited and into some kind of semblance that's going to be entertaining for people. Yeah. But it just shows there's going to be more to come of some form, whether it be writing or whatever. But we're getting reports from mountain bikers, not just one mountain biker, more than one mountain biker. And I'll not say a particular area, but they've experienced being chased through the forest by something that two of them have said we thought it were a bear. So bears in Forest of North Yorkshire, do you know? And, so mind you, we say that, how crazy. What a thing to say. I'm talking about people who are seeing things with the description of a werewolf or dogman, as people like to call it. And I'm saying there's no bears in forest. I mean, they can't be real. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, I mean, most people now are of the opinion that the big cats that are seen are either released or escaped exotic animals from years ago. And we had a chat about this, didn't we, on the first time you came on the podcast, which was really interesting. I mean, who knows? Captive bears may have been released at some point.
Trouble is, wouldn't there be carnage? Do you know? I mean, we know that a bear. Then let's play with the idea that that's what people are seeing. First of all, they're not just carnivorous; they're omnivorous. So there would be vegetation, wouldn't there? But there's enough sort of static wildlife, as in sheep and cows and horses, we would think that these things would have predated on something like that at some stage.
And deer as well, obviously. Yeah, deer as well,
Yeah, but I mean, think how easy it would be to catch farm animals compared to a roe deer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I don't see it with the bear. I seriously don't see it. But I do think there's some kind of paranormal aspect. But jump into the cats. Like you said, 1976, where the Dangerous Animals Act came in, and the people allegedly, they released their pets or their exotic animals into the wild. So it is possible. But 1976, they must have been breeding, Craig, because the average lifespan of a big cat, and I think, is between 14 and 17 years in the wild.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we're talking 1976. So, they'd have been gone now. So who's to say there isn't breeding pairs? I got a report on Monday from I spoke to the guy today, and a friend of mine called Mick Tate put me onto this guy. On Monday, he was in York with a friend, and they pulled into a field, the edge of a field. He needed a wee, basically, and it were late at night, 11 o'clock at night, and they both got out of the car and they decided to look at stars and what have you. Well, they just pulled in, and this is on outskirts of York. I haven't got the exact location yet. We've only spoke today. He said, but they were an horrible smell. He said, and I thought, that smells vile. He said, but then we became aware of, he said, there's no woods. He says, there's thick hedgerow of heavy branches breaking. And now these guys are pest control officers.
Right.
That don't make them wildlife experts. He says, but we know about foxes and we know about badgers and things. He says, this was really heavy. He says, and then all of a sudden there's a very, he says, the rib cage on whatever it was, and he believes it were a cat. He says, he knows nothing about what I do, by the way. He didn't even know I wrote the books, because I said, can I use your name and can I write about this? And he says, why? What did you do? What do you do? It's just a friend who's put me on to this guy. And he believes, he says, the depth of the rib cage to produce this really deep growl, he says, frightened us. He says, we got back in the car. He says, so we sat in the car for a bit. He says, but then when we put the car headlights on and started they'd just gone into a field entrance, he says, there's an half-eaten deer.
All right.
So, what, it a big cat? Do you know, chances are it.
Yeah, probably is. Yeah, so...
Well, I don't know if you're aware, I did ask him if it was close to Garraby Hill, on the outskirts of York, and he's not certain. We're going to find out. He'd gone there with his friend, so he's not familiar with area. But I'm going to get all this information off him. But the reason I ask about Garraby Hill is because the wood's running parallel. Well, the wood on the left-hand side as you go up Garraby Hill, there's been deer found in trees, within the branches of trees in that wood, which suggests there's a cat in area. And another place a little bit further on, which could be the same animal, is called Weaverthorpe. And Weaverthorpe would probably be about 7 or 8 miles from Garraby Hill. And there's a farmer there found deer in trees. They don't talk about this a lot, it's not something, you get a sensationalist story of a big cat scene in one of major papers, and you see a cat and you look at grass that it's again, and you think to yourself, yeah, that's just a big house cat.
Yeah.
But the actual genuine ones rarely get talked about in that context. The farmer that finds the deer in the trees has not, that would be quite a scoop to sort of take pictures of those animals, set a webcam up and see, but they're not bothered. They're more bothered about farming and their livestock. I've been told by one farmer that he shot one.
Yeah.
Because he'd lost some sheep. That's more interesting to them. But I don't know. We're just.
In my experience, they are very guided about what they will talk about. There's been instances of. We know Todmorden around here for me is an area where there's been a lot of activity, and there are farmers who historically have lost a lot of livestock who won't speak to people about it. They're just not interested in speaking to folk. And I think, and again, using that as an example, there was, I think the fear of ridicule comes into it as well, because the Todmorden local paper last year ran a story about a big cat. It was a big black. It was described as a big black puma, in effect, that jumped over a dry stone wall onto a road, tarmac track, in front of a group of walkers, and then jumped over the dry stone wall on the other side of the road and disappeared off, down into the fields and the woods and what have you. And this was run in the Todmorden paper, and of course the comments section, it was just ridicule after ridicule.
Just rips people to bits, doesn't it? And you used to see it more. I wouldn't say so much on social media such as Facebook, but there'd be these, I don't know what they'd call them on internet, but it'd be like a Bridlington group or a Filey group, and it's like a message board. Yeah. And there'll be, like you've just said, a UFO spotted, and then it just seems to bring out the comedians.
It does, yeah.
Who absolutely love I don't know. There's no thought goes into it, and we do realise that there are researchers out there that would believe every passing satellite is a visitor from planet whatever.
Planet X.
Yeah, but that's not always the case, Craig, is it? You know, and but it ruins it for the people who like to take it a little bit more serious. But
yeah, I mean, we sort of do a bit more due diligence on these things, don't we? We try and get to the bottom of it a little bit more. Whereas, I think there are a lot of researchers out there who are in it purely to make a fast buck. I mean, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't make a fast buck out of this.
No, there's not. There's $5, and you're not making you wouldn't survive if you wanted money off them $5. Let's put it that way.
No, absolutely
and but you don't do it for those reasons, do you? You know, you're doing it because you wanted to just get that relevant information, relevant to what Craig's doing, relevant to what Paul's doing. Just before we move from cats, you know, we're talking about more than likely that they are ex-captive animals that have bred. But there is a strange kind of element to them that, and I'll just cite one example I've done numerous times, and I might have even spoke to you about it. But there's a lane between Bempton and Bridlington here close to where I live called Short Lane. Short because it's about a mile long, and it's just got intermittent hawthorn edges. You know, you might have 20 foot of edge and then 40 foot of open land where you've just got this single track road and fields either side of it. There's nothing. Yeah, over the years, the archives in the Bridlington Free Press and people reporting seen big black cat on that lane. And it's weird. I've got a lady who will walk in her horse to stable it to an eat-by farm, and she'd come onto the corner, and I said, where are we? She said, Short Lane. She said, it's laid in the grass, and it hissed at the horse. The horse saw it, kind of didn't rear up and run away, and then they carried on walking. But once again, Short Lane, I don't understand the significance of Short Lane. There's no cave system, there's no tunnels, it's got nothing there, yet it throws up big cat sightings. It also throws up UFO sightings. Do you know, and substantial UFO sightings, 2006, I believe, a young man who lived in Bempton. I actually went to his property, I'm not sure where it is, to speak to his parents, because I was asking if there'd been any cat sightings. This is ironic because it weren't to do with Short Lane, this. And I bumped into the son, who would have been about 32, 33 at the time. He says, no, he says, I don't know about any of that. He says, but I've seen a UFO.
Oh, right. I says,
really? He says, yeah, would you allow me to record you? Not because I want to trap him. It's just brilliant for reference when you're writing something up. So I did, and I said, where did you see it? And he said, well, it was my first car. He said, and I'd got a BMW, an old BMW. He said, and there'd be, I don't know, probably insurance would have been worth a lot more than car. And he said, me and a few friends would go into Bridlington, into town. He says, and obviously they think that they're the one, aren't they? The young lads, sort of late teens, early 20s, and they've got the car. He says, we'd cruise about, not really doing any damage to anybody, and then we'd go home. He says, and this, back to Bempton, he says, this particular night, we went up Bempton Lane and we went across Short Lane, which we've just been describing. And he says, I don't know, time, after 11. He said, and as we're driving along, obviously it's absolutely devoid of light, and it's a single track with a few passing places, nothing on it. He says, and this thing just went straight past us on the road, literally. This object just zoomed straight past us. It's like as fast as a bee, he says. I says, okay, yeah. He says, and we all I put the brakes, and I says, a few words, and what was that? We're looking. And next thing, it's back, and it's above the car. He said, and it's coming down. And I think he said he'd got gold and blue panels that were turning, just revolving, quite large, bigger than his car. He says, and it's just coming down. He says, and we're absolutely bricking it. He says, we're frightened. He says, and it's just about to touch road. He says, it's that close. He says, and then it just went, and all we saw were literally a trail, and it had gone. But Short Lane, you know, it's crazy that particular location. Then you think to yourself, how many? That's in the grand scheme of things. That's just me being told a few stories. How many more are out there? Craig, I think there will be more out there, and it's no different with the place that you're involved in and the places that you're looking into, and the things that happen in Accrington. Am I right? That right? Yeah. So for every story you get, I'd like to bet there's 20 or 30 people that are just sitting on them saying nothing because they're not going to leave themselves vulnerable to ridicule, which is what you've just said earlier.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, how do you feel about, do you ever get approached by, well, I assume you've been approached by the press, especially the local press. I mean, how do you feel about talking to local press? The only reason I'm asking is because I was approached by a reporter from the Lancashire Evening Telegraph a couple of weeks ago, and I did a very short radio interview, but I felt quite uncomfortable doing it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't 100% sure of what her motives really were.
You're not in control of it.
Yeah, I actually haven't gone to look on the website to have a look what she's put on in case it's something that I don't like.
Isn't it strange that's a fact? With the books, we'll jump to that in a moment. But with books, you might have 50 good comments and you might have one bad comment, and you only remember bad one, don't you?
You do.
Yeah, that's the nature of humans, I suppose, of us. But in the past, the Free Press, the Bridlington Free Press, have been very good with me. To be honest with you, not really ridiculed. When I wrote the first book, they put advert in for me saying, author of Unexplained Phenomena is writing a book. Anybody want to come forward with any stories? And I got a few stories. I got Willsthorpe through that. And there's one in Hornsey that's done the same. There's another paper, the Bridlington Echo. They seem okay. But I'd be very dubious about the bigger papers. I've been approached quite a few times, to be honest with you, because it always seems that there's a ridicule slant to it, and you've no power over it. And it's, I suppose it's like anybody who writes. They can turn what you've said into a bit of a joke just by tagging a few words of their own at the end of it, their views and comments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You talk about, does Craig think aliens are visiting Accrington? And we asked Craig, and, with a sly smile, Craig said no. And that sly smile, it means a lot to people who are reading it and thinking like, I don't know, it's difficult.
Yeah,
and,
it's just the wording, isn't it? It's just those extra words or the inference in a sentence can completely change the way that somebody would view you as a person. They might suddenly read that and think, well, actually, this guy's a bit of a crank, or he's a bit of a nutcase, or whatever. It's interesting, is that, because I'm always quite wary of reporters, to be honest. But anyway, we'll move on then to some more stories from Truth Proof. Any recent investigations or anything that particularly strikes you as interesting that went in the book?
Well, I were amazed. Originally, I was going to write 2 books. Right. So there were one going to be similar to Truth, the Truth Proof books, should we say, and I was going to write one solely on cryptids. The bipedal, fur-covered, whatever you want to call them. But I felt a bit saturated. I've done 5 in kind of 5 years, and I knew I'd got enough material, combining the UFO related information and the cryptid information, to sort of push together this book. But it's turned out there's a lot more cryptid type reports in it than UFO reports, but there's still plenty of each. But no, it's a mix. They're all the books are much the same. Some of my views have changed from book 1, 2, and 3 on various things. When I wrote book 1, as you know, we've got the disused RAF base on the East Coast here, RAF Bempton, which I always say it's strictly out of bounds for public, so I'm not recommending anybody go on the base. I always say that. But in the first book, because in the late 1970s, mid to late 1970s to the 1990s, there was rumours that it had been used by a satanic cult.
Right.
So, so when Truth Proof 1, should we say, it were rumours, and it were just told stories that it might have been used by a satanic cult. And then in book 2, I'd found more information that pointed in the direction that it definitely was. Book 3, there were no umming and ahhing. We'd got it. I'd actually spoken to somebody who'd been involved in it, and they got away from it because originally, whatever were happening down there, it had started off as Aleister Crowley type ritualistic magic.
Yeah,
if magic's the word, but then it became a lot darker, and they were apparently trying to summon demons, and this guy got out of it. And I visited him in his home. I was with Chris Turner, actually. We both visited the guy, and he gave me information. I went and saw him a few times afterwards, and I was told in no uncertain terms that they're still operating. I'm not going to say where, but it's not there anymore. And he's not involved in it, but pretty dark stuff. And then I've got a witness who I've not managed to get on film who actually saw animal sacrifice down there. I hope that's not too strong for your podcast here, Craig. I know we've not said anything graphic, have we? And I don't need to say any more than that.
No, but, I mean, these things happen, don't they, unfortunately? So,
well, he went down there with a friend because it was kind of a rite of passage for teenagers, when they were years ago, when it were open, as in you could actually access it, be illegally, by the way. I mean, I never did that, but I weren't living there as a teen. But what I'm saying is a lot of the local people from Bridlington and Flamborough found their way onto the bunker and into it to look at this underground complex, if you want to call it a complex, because I think it literally got burnt out. But the walls are festooned with erotic graffiti, which is, I don't know if you've ever looked online, have you?
No, I'm not actually.
No, it's quite interesting. A lot of it's been smashed now and kind of defaced because it were really good artwork, but very graphic.
I'll be Googling that afterwards.
Yeah, it were good artwork, but very graphic. But I mean, a lot of the people, I won't say researchers, had missed the fact that there's a lot of tetragrams on walls, there's runes, there's all sorts of symbolism on the walls as well. But as I say, I don't want to labour on this cult for too long, but it's been suggested that they were responsible, or could it be some kind of satanic cult? Not necessarily there. That's ceased to function as that kind of thing since the 1990s, sealed over now, it's concreted over. But it was suggested that were they responsible for the animal mutilations that were taking place in 2017-18 up and around Bempton, Flamborough and Speeton. But no, I'm not sort of the law on this, but being the person who were absolutely boots on the ground at 4:30, 5:30 in the morning, finding these carcasses, and I literally were for the farmer. Nothing to do with unexplained phenomena. I went into this asking him if he'd let me help him. Yeah, people did not do that. Whatever was responsible for killing them animals, it was not people. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into it like that, but it's.
Well, no, not too deep, I don't think, to be honest, Paul.
No. I think you're right. I think you're right because it is graphic, and when you're finding them, I mean, I spent over 2 years up there, finding these unfortunate animals, should we say?
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of chatted, haven't we, in the past about how the wounds look surgical and they're all the same sort of wounds. And interestingly, when you were telling me about some of the animal carcasses that you'd found over your way, it was ringing bells with me as to what I'd heard had been happening over here, especially the one at Todmorden with the calf a couple of years ago. Very, very similar. So it's a subject that I do find very interesting, but I think, going into the real sort of ins and outs
it's dark, Craig. You're right.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to say, let's try and lighten it up then. And
yeah, let's lighten it up. Get me a drink.
Let's move on to lights in the sky then, to lighten it up. I mean, you have an awful lot of sightings over the North Sea, don't you? Out from well, Bempton's a place that you've mentioned a lot. Flamborough Head is quite close by, isn't it?
Yeah, mile and a half down coast. So we're all in the same proximity. If you consider that Flamborough Head is a mile and a half that way to the right, and Speeton's a mile and a half, a mile to the left.
Yeah.
Area of sky, 22 miles you can see to horizon. You wherever they're appearing, you're in that zone.
Do you think it does have anything to do then with the old Air Force Base? Do you think that's a factor?
I don't know. Isn't it unusual that old military installations and new military installations seem to attract unexplained phenomena, lights and UFOs? And Stakston Wold is a prime example. Remind me about Stakston in a moment. We'll stay on Lights Over at Sea. But, Jason Davis, who did the cover for Night People, came up just after Christmas, and he wanted to spend a few days in area, and I spent some time with him. But this particular night, we'd both got these Psionics cameras. I don't know if people are familiar with them, but for what they can do, they're still quite expensive, but for what they can do, basically they can see in dark where a lot of cameras can't, but they only film in 720p. But they're good value for money. So my camcorder's worth a lot more, but this thing at £1,000 can see a lot better in dark. Do you know what I'm saying? So basically, this particular night, Jason sort of dropped on, I don't know, a really good few days to stay, because we'd got these orange spheres appearing in the sky. And we went up to the back of Flamborough Lighthouse, and you'd see one appear, just lights up like a big globe. So unfortunately, that's the drawback of these cameras. It lights up white in the camera. It's bright orange. Then, I don't know, it's hard to get a perspective because they're out there out in the North Sea. It only looks like that far, but it could be 2 miles away. Another one appears, then another one. And then they just switch off. They're not flying away from anywhere. They're not coming in from anywhere. And that's the nature of them. That's what the rock anglers have been seeing for decades and decades. These are the things that the Coast Guard get call-outs for, and then charge the lifeboat from Flamborough, Filey, Bridlington, because they've seen a member of the public or Coast Guard or a police officer has seen orange lights out at sea. So they're assuming that there's a ship in distress, aircraft. And
flare or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, common sense, they've got to act on it, because they can't deny that they've seen it, but common sense dictates that these aren't flares. They're literally lighting up and just switching off, or lighting up and going into a multiple. I mean, there's a photograph that I've got from a guy called Brian Lancaster. I don't know if I've spoke to you about it. I might not have done. He teaches photography. Yeah. And he brought some students up to Flamborough Head. I don't know how many, let's assume 3 or 4. And he was doing time-lapse photography. Now, he's the expert. I'm only repeating what he's told me. And I've got the photograph. I've got the raw image and everything, which is good. He took it on a Nikon camera. So he sets a tripod up, and he's taking photographs, 30-second time-lapse photograph. So gathering as much light to create these fabulous, I don't know, sort of other-earthly scenes of the coves of Flamborough and things. So he's taking this photograph, and 8 seconds in, one orange light appears, and he kind of points it out to his students. What's that? Because he's not flown in from anywhere. And I don't know, 15 seconds in, another one appears at the side of it. They're sort of at a 2 o'clock position. And 28 seconds in, I think that's when he said, the third one appeared. And he's thinking, God, I hope I'm going to get this in a photograph, because there's nothing staged. He'd not gone looking for this. He'd gone to teach his students about these in a place that will produce these evocative photographs. And snapped at 30 seconds, he's got it. But what the photograph proves, because there's no motion blur, they're just there. They haven't flown from anywhere. He said you'd have seen a trail. This is the expert, not me. He said they've not flown away when, because they'd actually vanished when he took the picture. And yet we've got 3 solid-looking orange lights in the sky. So for the skeptic, it's an hard one for them to debunk. When I'll talk about these lights, and they say, you're seeing afterburners. Or, it's meteorites, or all manner of things people will come up with. that one will take some beating because the photograph itself, and he's given me all the data. So when I've done it, say I'm going to talk at Awakening and I'm going to actually speak about that photograph, not in any great length, just for a few minutes, but I've put the full bunch of data at the side of the photograph. So people, anybody with knowledge of photographic knowledge can sort of analyze that and think, yeah, I don't know how this is. Because he said them lights must have been kind of just projecting forward from somewhere and then switching off. He said if you shine a torch into the darkness, you'll see a beam.
Yeah.
He said, but there's nothing from them. So it's an interesting photograph, you know.
Yeah, there's no trail or anything like that from them.
And the lights are typical. What he's got, the lights are typical of what people are seeing. And, you know, I don't want to do a repeat of what we did on last chat that we did and talk about the same stuff. But did I speak about myself and Lee Haywood seeing that huge sphere on the hillside?
I don't think so, no.
No, I've gone up there for years and years and you know, spent far too much time up there than I ought to do. And I'd go up with Bob Brown and other people. And Lee Haywood's a good friend of mine, and he's a bit of a skeptic, but in a decent way. There's no sarcasm, but he'd heard me on about the lights, and he thought he'd be able to explain what they were. He's got a lot of military knowledge. Right. So he knew what aircraft were in the sky. He knew what military planes might have been. Well, not might have been, would have been there, if any. He could even tell you names at boats out on horizon. He'd got everything sort of weighed up, and I picked him up. We're going up Cliff Lane, which takes you to the RSPB Nature Reserve. And he said to me, he says, go on then, Paul, just describe what these lights are like. And this is how it is. And I went like that. You know, honestly, you shouldn't, you shouldn't swear on your kids' lives, but that's what it. And he went, and he said, he didn't say it at the time. He says, as soon as I saw it, I thought, I don't know what that is. And it just looks like a large, bright orange globe in the sky, but it's not throwing any light out like a flare would to illuminate the area. That switches off. We park the car. We go down to the cliffs, set a camera up, just put something over it because it's a lot of moisture in there. And over a period of a few hours, we saw them in various places out over at sea. But then I turned round to speak to Lee. And as I turn around, there's a hill about 100 yards away, just gradual slope on it. And in front of the hill, just above the ground, there's a huge orange sphere. Literally, Lee estimated to be about 80 yards away. And his words were, I think it were about as big as a Volkswagen Beetle. It was huge. Yeah. And I'm going, whoa, what? And I'm trying to tell him, and he's looking, and we're both looking at this thing. I've got my camera, and as fast as I'm looking at it and trying to get my camera on, it's just imploding, and it's gone. And fascinating. And right now, Lee's sort of, I wouldn't say converted, but Lee realizes there's something more to these lights.
Yeah,
you know, and it's the awareness. Because I say I go up there all the time with Bob Brown, and we can go up for 6 months and see nothing, and then all of it, you'll take somebody and something happens. So let's use that hill as an example. This sphere of light, and please tell me if I'm repeating a story. I think I might have told you about the rock angler who, 1998, he claims that he were in a fishing match. And a spaceship, his words were spaceship. He says it landed on that hill over there. So he told us, because me and Bob were up on the cliff tops in the night, and we can see the distant light of a rock angler's probably another 1/2 a mile away. And I said, he's on move, he's coming up this way, Bob. I said, when he gets a bit closer, I'll put a light on. I don't want to startle him. So I put the light on, and he sort of draws up as a natter to us. And he knew who I was, because I know quite a few anglers, and they'll have asked about these lights for me. And his name's Mick Sigson, this guy. And I says, how many years have you been fishing up here then? He says, 49 years, 50 years this year. I said, okay. Imagine how old he is. And they climb over the fence, and they literally stand on edge of a sheer drop that ranges from 80 foot to 420, depending where you are along them cliffs. Then they've got to try and get the line into sea and catch fish.
I know.
Anyway,
crackers in it.
Yeah, so it is. I asked him if he'd seen the lights, which he said. I explained what they were like, and he said he'd never seen them. He says, but I've seen some unusual things. Then he says, and we were again the hill. Mm. This is before me and Lee Haywood saw that. He said, I've seen a spaceship land on that hill. He says it was 1998 and it were in a fishing match. He says, and the anglers that were close by just did a runner. We just left.
Right. Yeah.
He says, he says, at first I thought it was a combine harvester. He said, and looking, what's a combine doing up there in November? He says, then I realised there's a gap between the land and it just come down and landed. So the hill throws up a lot of strange anomalies.
Is it a natural hill, or is it, or do you think it could be some sort of earthworks from?
I think it's a natural hill. Right? I think it's a natural hill because when you actually get on top of the hill, there's not a hill at the other side. Do you know what I'm saying? It's curved and it's almost like you're looking at the front of a big hill and you'd expect it to be the same at the other side, but then the land just kind of tapers off just into farmland. Yeah. So, I don't know what year it was. Well, it was 2019, because I know what year it was. Why did I say that? It was February the 8th. Nice. And how do I know that? Because I've just been doing this presentation. Right. One of our daughters, Gemma, was staying with us for a few weeks. And she's not really interested in TV soaps and all that kind of stuff. And she's not really interested in unexplained phenomena. But I think out of the two, she thought, well, I'll come up and see what this is all about with Bob and my dad. Bob Brown and my dad's, as in me. So we went up and it's dark and I've got quite a powerful torch and I'm just busy getting my camera set up, looking out to sea and getting a cover over it. And I can hear Bob and Gemma talking. And Gemma says, what's that over there, Bob? What's that light over there? And she's got torch. I could hear it in background. I'm not really, he goes, oh, it's a board on a fence post. And then he realises, because he's up there all the time, there isn't a board on a fence post up there. It should be about 3 or 4 foot off ground, just, panel. So he puts his torch on it, and immediately they both said this thing just dropped at floor and vanished. It's a white square, which is odd. It don't kind of make sense, does it? What could that have been? Because, so what makes this even more interesting for me, that night, she stayed up watching TV. We went to bed. So it takes it over into February the 9th, which will make sense in a minute. And she says, I'm watching TV. She said, no, back of her, you've got a solid brick wall. You've got a hallway behind that and another brick wall. The hallway is ours. It's all within our home. I've converted this to flats, but the lady had moved out so there's nobody above and the soundproofed anyway. She says, no. I thought, what's that noise? She said, I thought I could hear thunder, and I turned the TV down. Then I realised that right behind me, there's something growling. She said, and she said, it was terrifying. She said, oh, absolutely. She said, it was so loud. It was as loud as thunder, she said, and it was absolutely terrifying. And it's unusual for her to come out with something like that. Do you know what I mean? I've wrote Night People, and I've wrote about all my experiences from childhood to present day, and there's been a few with 2 daughters that things have happened. Yeah, but nothing with her. Do you know what I mean?
Did she see anything then, Paul?
She never saw a thing. She never saw a thing.
That must have been terrifying, though.
She said it were absolutely. She said, I've been scared before, I've been frightened before, but never like that. Yeah. She said it sounded demonic. Yeah. And her words, and it just makes you wonder. I mean, if we kind of jump to other side of the world and look at Skinwalker, and we hear about the people that go there and allegedly bring attachments back with them. So some kind of demonic, some kind of, I don't know, residue of what's occurring there comes back with them and things affect them. And I'm just seriously considering the fact that could be what's happened. Now, I said to you that she saw it on February the 8th, but it bled over into February the 9th, the experience. Oh. The reason I say that is, and I will have spoke about this before, but the 2 ex-military guys that went onto the cliff tops and saw what they alleged was a werewolf in 2019. That's 2019. Gemma's were 2020. But it was February the 9th.
Right.
So there's a year between, but the same dates.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's peculiar, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like, is there some sort of, I mean, let's go completely left field with this. I mean, is there some sort of portal? Have you seen some sort of portal open, something come out, something followed you, attached itself? Is it doing it regular that day? I mean, have you been back on that day in subsequent years to see if...
Yeah. And, there's another date, June. There's a date in June that's thrown up quite a lot of anomalies, June the 15th. June the 15th saw there's a tragedy, so we shouldn't class it as entertainment, but June the 15th saw a tornado crash, 1998, just off Flamborough Head and Bempton, not that far away from the alleged magnetic anomaly. June the 15th, 2020 saw the F-15 Sea Eagle crash in a similar area. June the 15th, when I first wrote about in the first book about the animal deaths, we'll call them, around Cliff Lane, started with one thing, a triangle in a pea crop, which I took a picture of and dated as June the 15th, and everything sent to snowball from there. June the 15th, 2011, the wallabies, the first wallaby, little kangaroo at Soby Park Zoo, a few miles away, was killed. Well, I'm not the too graphic with it, but it lost its head.
Right.
They never found that. Then there were 6, and then 4 more got killed, and they removed the last one for its own safety. Now, what I find interesting, on June the 13th, the same paper that reported the wallaby were reporting UFO sightings. Literally on opposite page, if you'd open it out, there's UFO sightings in Flamborough, which is just a few. Do we connect the two? They're connected in paper by print, but we can't say that A is responsible for B. But it's interesting, isn't it? But then if we expand on that and just stay with the wallabies of all things, throughout the UK, wallabies got decapitated.
Right.
In 2011 in small animal parks, Hanwell Bunny Park, or Cotswolds.
Yeah.
I did lots of research and rang lots of animal parks up. And, obviously I didn't ring them up and say, has this happened? I'd actually got a bit of a lead looking in local papers.
Yeah.
But then if we expand it further and we go to Australia, New South Wales, Coffs Coast, Emerald Coast, wallabies were suffering the same fate. Now,
weird.
What does that? Do you know? Do you know, in most instances, a fox was blamed.
Right.
Fox. Now, I spoke to the dead zookeeper at Soby Park Zoo. He took me into office and we sat down, told him I were really interested in this, and a fox were blamed. And he said a fox has been blamed. He says, but I don't think it had been a fox. He says most of them were, the ones they had were Bennett's wallabies. Interestingly, most of the wallabies that were killed were Bennett's. These are the biggest. Yeah. Of the wallabies. He said, a fox, I don't think, could take one of them. He says, but not only that, the cuts were clean. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I hope your listeners don't think I'm too macabre here, but
no, it's interesting. No, I mean, I had a very long holiday in Australia a few years back, and I came into very close contact with wallabies and kangaroos and all sorts of stuff, cassowaries and you name it. I mean, wallabies are quite substantial. I mean, they're not as substantial as a kangaroo. I mean, I was 6'2", and a kangaroo stood up in front of me and it towered over me when it went up on its hind legs. But I mean, you see wallabies all over the place. I mean, they're obviously, in wild herds, if that's the correct adjective to use for them out there, and they are quite substantial animals. So, just by your description, I wouldn't have thought a fox could have decapitated an animal that size.
Well, they were a little bit more sarcastic in Australia when the fox was used as an example, and some of the papers said we're looking for a fox with a samurai sword. Do you know? So, and I mean, the zookeeper were keen to point out that they only blamed a fox because they'd seen a fox round the zoo. But they'd also seen a fox round the zoo over a period of years. Do you know what I mean? And all they were doing, and all these people are doing, they're not doing anything wrong, but they're actually looking for most plausible explanation. And even if the cuts and the wounds suggest that it couldn't be that, it's still far more plausible than to suggest that some unknown phenomenon is doing it. But basically, I mean, that's a bit of a sweeping statement because we haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
You know, all the time I were on them fields in 2017, and we're not going to dig deep into this, I promise you, but I never found out what we're doing it. I'd not got a clue. Do you know? And voices, unnatural voices. I heard them once, and that was pretty unnerving. I went into wood early one morning, and excuse me, and I heard robotic voices. That's what it sounded like.
Yes.
So, and some people said, well, here's the most plausible one. Could it have been a walkie-talkie? There's somebody in amongst the bracken, and that's a possibility. You know, but it did unnerve me.
Yeah.
And with the farmer, where I was parking my vehicle, he's got a bit of a hard standing and, you know, decking area. And he said to me, before I'd heard the voices in the early morning, he said, I'm sat out here the other night having a drink of tea, summer's evening, and there's corn at the side of his decking, a big field of corn. So as you know, anybody with half a brain would know, if you walk in it, you're going to leave a trail. He said, I'm sat here, he said, and I can hear voices in corn. I said, well, what do you mean voices? Are you sure it weren't like an echo or something carrying? He says, no. I says, 15, 20 foot away from me, and I can hear them. And there's nothing. It's just flat, level, tight, packed field of corn. Don't bear thinking about, does it? Well, you know, there was something really otherworldly happening up there at that particular time. But don't you think, I don't know about where you research, but let's throw the net out. Don't you think these things kind of go in waves, and it goes a bit flat, and it's almost like something's bubbling up, and it's gone, it's spilled out onto the land again.
Yeah.
What do you think, Craig? Do you think it's the location that's allowing different types of phenomena to come through, or do you think that we've got one phenomena that's sort of all an hive mind kind of thing that can be all things? Is that too much to suggest?
I think personally, I think your first explanation is more credible to me. I mean, I certainly believe that the amount of phenomena that happens over this way has got a lot to do with the location. It's got a lot to do with, I mean, I've said this many a time, you know, the geology of the land. I mean, we spoke last week about Morecambe Bay, for instance, and the UFO sightings over Morecambe Bay. The proximity of the nuclear power station at Heysham, the proximity of the nuclear power station at Sellafield, or the recycling, the plutonium recycling centre as it is now, I think. But the just the geology of the bay itself is quite unique, and I think that where you are, I think there's obviously some sort of unique geological phenomena, or there is it's something to do with, I mean, I don't know. You'll know better than me. Something to do with the sea, something to do with maybe what's on the sea floor. I mean, out from where you are, I mean, it was obviously before it was flooded after the Ice Age. It was a whole area of inhabited land, wasn't it? So
yeah, we've got Doggerland out there.
Yeah, yes.
And another in close proximity, not that far away, there's what's called the Silver Pit Crater, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's one of the biggest impact. The speculation, originally they thought it were an impact crater. It's absolutely huge. They've only done it. Is it seismic surveys? That's, there's no. I don't know if people have dove down and can see the significance of it, but you can see what this thing was. But now they don't know if it's actually the earth underneath it, the ground underneath it, that's give way and created it. But it's all in layers. Right. It's really interesting. If anybody wants to Google the Silver Pit Crater, it's an interesting name, but I can't remember year. Someone tells me it was 1930s that, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. I think it was 1938, 37. But a trawler went off course during, obviously trawling for fish, and ended up over the Silver Pit Crater, and they got nets and nets full of these silverfish. Right. So that's why there's no there's no UFO element to the Silver Pit crater or a mystical element, as far as I know. It's simply because of the fish that they would catch in that location, and it was quite by chance that they caught them.
I wonder if there's some sort of magnetic anomaly then.
There is. The old maps, and maybe some new maps say it, but they'll say a magnetic anomaly is said to exist in this location.
Right.
And when I talk to trawlermen, quite a lot of them who I know, I won't say all of them, but many of them have experienced it at once or twice in their fishing lifetime. So they'll be fishing, I don't know, 10 to 15 miles off the head, as they call it, Flamborough Head. And suddenly compass is just going daft. And they know where they are because they're experienced with sea, but it's just nothing's working. It's just not right. And they'll carry on steaming out, as they say, and they go through it. And on the way back, it's not there. And then for another 10 years, it's not there. So they've encountered this alleged magnetic anomaly, which it says in bottom corners of some maps. And it's 18 nautical miles between Bempton and Flamborough that it is out. And what else is interesting, and I keep pushing this simply because, some researchers hear you say something, and I don't mean you, I'm on about, somebody, and then they just think, oh, that's an interesting play on words, or that's an interesting thing. I'm going to use that. And I've said things, I'll get to what I'm on about in a minute, but I've said things, and then somebody said to me once, intelligent light forms. Well, an author wrote about that in 2011 in his book. And I said, all right, yeah. He says, what does it mean? He said, you're using somebody else. No, I'm not. I said, if you look at 2004, I had a website called ILF UFO, Intelligent Life Forms. I said, you want to look at the author and ask him where he's got it from. Yeah. Do you know, we're only words. None of us own the words. But what I'm saying is, jumping back to this magnetic anomaly, I wouldn't say running slap bang through it, but it's on a prime meridian line as well, which is interesting. And I don't know whether researchers, I've only stumbled upon this, but I don't know whether any researchers have looked into that aspect of it, because I think it's something that I'll have a look into, looking at other areas of high strangeness, the Hoya Forest, loads of different places. And the similarities.
I mean, ley lines are an interesting phenomenon. So again, there's major ley lines. I know major ley lines over your way as there are over here. But it's funny what just going back a couple of sentences, what you were talking about, people coming out with the same sentences. Do you not find it amusing, or maybe amusing is the wrong word, that sometimes you find people plagiarize you? Other investigators, in inverted commas, latch onto your ideas, and then suddenly, they're all over it like a rash, and yet they've no logical explanation for what they're talking about. They've no experience about what they're talking about, and yet they're quite happy to plagiarize something that perhaps you've taken a lot of time to research and a lot of time to look into and a lot of time to consider and a lot of time to think about, and then suddenly somebody comes along and pinches your good idea. Do you know?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, ILF UFO, intelligent light forms, and let's not forget that, like I said earlier, that we don't own the words, Craig, do we? But it's nice when you think, I look at these lights and I don't think, I want to call them a nice name and people will like that. I'm thinking, Lee Haywood says, what do these lights look like? And I said, like that. And there's something there. It's almost like there's an awareness. There's a rock. We'll stay with this, but I want to make it why I called them that. There's a rock angler up there. I think it was 2004. Goes up fishing on a crisp winter's night, looking at all the stars, and he sees a very bright one in the heavens and can't place it. He's just look. He said, but no, sooner I started looking at it, then it's on top of me. It obviously weren't in heavens, and it's lit the ground up around him, like he says, just like a welder's light. And then it's gone. And there's an intermind connection. That's why I called them. I've come up with this intelligent light forms.
Yeah.
I don't mean they think like Craig or Paul or anybody listening to this, but it's almost as though there's an awareness there with them. I mean, the same rock angler not that one, the same one that claims he saw the spaceship land on the cliff tops. Myself and Bob, and it was great because Bob was there. I'd already asked him if he'd seen the orange lights, and he said he hadn't in all the years he'd fished there. And when we put the cameras away, because we filmed him and everything talking about this alleged spaceship, 2 orange lights lit up above us. And I got the camera out, and they went off. You know, something's happening. You know, there's some awareness there of something, but I don't know what it is, and I don't know whether it considers us as any importance. It might just be the human emotion that's connecting with this great out of nowhere. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah. No, it could be. No, it's a really good play on words. Is intelligent life forms. I think it's
then we termed it the intermind connection. And I don't like. Obviously, we've got words that encompass everything that we're looking into, and I think it might have been. I'll probably get it wrong, but Jenny Randall's will term something the Oz factor. So when they go into this altered environment that accompanies most unexplained phenomena episodes, or a lot of them. I mean, not every one, but a lot of people report during a UFO incident. We've entered this strange. I'm calling it the lower silence. You know, this strange where everything sort of goes silent and feels compressed and weird. Yeah. And I think that the answers that we're all searching for, be it spirit in nature, UFO, cryptids, the same element runs through them all. In many instances, this lower silence, this altered, disjointed reality, should we say? So I think the answer lies there. Do you know? Because all aspects of the phenomena seem to be able to manifest or impose this feeling on the individual that's experiencing it, or individuals. Yeah. You know, cryptid. You know, that suppressed world is kind of different. You know, 1960s. Sorry, Craig. Go on.
No. I was just going to say. I mean, we only naturally see a very narrow band of light, as it were, or you know, we see light as how we see it, but across the spectrum there is, you know, we only see a very small percentage of the whole spectrum that the universe throws at us, both visually and I would imagine audibly as well, and this sort of, to coin the phrase sixth sense that some people have, that I think, you know, I think you have, other people I've spoken to who've had experiences, I think they have, where they sort of shift slightly into a different consciousness, or a different realm, or they're seeing a slightly different wavelength, which is why these things are appearing almost, and you know, don't take this the wrong way, almost on command. You're looking for something and it appears. So there must be something you're doing. You're as if, you know, the royal you're.
Maybe believing is seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you have an experience that's so profound and unmistakable, do you know what I mean? That it's unmistakable, as in it's convinced you that there's something else to what people are claiming they see. Yeah. Then you don't need to question anymore, do you? No. You know, and so you're already going there with that mindset that there's a possibility something could happen, and it's an expectancy. I don't know. I think it taps into us.
Yeah.
You know, as an individual, just like, I mean, I don't really know much about poltergeists and things like that, but it seems to tap into emotion. You know, the poltergeist phenomena, is that the way to pronounce or say it? I don't know. But human emotion, be it adolescence or trauma, you know, as in bereavement. I'm jumping from poltergeist here to ghosts and spirit, but how many times do we hear people say after they've lost a loved one, and I've heard it, and I think that's something as a public at large are quite willing to talk about. Oh, you know, my dad came to visit me, or my so-and-so, they sat at the end of the bed and they said everything would be all right. Is that just some kind of comforting mechanism within us that's helping us, or are they actually having that experience?
No,
I don't know.
No, it's a great subject, and it's a subject that I'm very passionate about, and it's something that I've done a lot of research into. So, but I mean, I've no answers. I don't think anybody has. But yeah, no, that is really interesting. You mentioned I'm conscious that we are getting on in time, and
Okay.
we both got
I'm a
lives.
59.
We both got well, yeah, we both got.
I've not got much left.
I'm not far behind you. Yeah, no, we've both got other things to be doing as well. You mentioned Staxton Wold. Go on, just tell.
Well, Staxton Wold. I mean, this primarily were in first book, but even before I wrote the book, I became friends with a farmer up there who'd got. I'd got my ILF UFO website. So I'm documenting things that are being seen all around the area. And this guy got in touch. I didn't know he were a farmer at the time. And he said, I'm seeing a lot of UFO activity around the land, around my farm and out over Sledmere. So I went and met the guy. And over a period of 2 or 3 years, I went and I spent quite a bit of time with him and his wife. And he'd got cameras set up in all his windows, back, front, side, overlooking the wolds and overlooking. They were looking close to the RAF base. They weren't overlooking the RAF base, and because he lives at the back of RAF Staxton Wold, and this guy's got more footage of unexplained phenomena than anybody I know, and it's just racked up. It's racked up on I8 tapes, on little digital tapes, and now on the more modern camcorders. And the orange spheres of light, he's got loads of it. And, I'd say, I've filmed something, and I'd go up there, and sure enough, I'm viewing his footage. But he was so precious with it. And, I've no disrespect to the guy, but he wouldn't let it out to the world. And I know you're conscious of time, but I'll just give you an example.
Oh, that's fine.
He was going to do that, so he contacted Richard D. Hall. Do you know Richard? The Rich Planet. And they were going to show him all the footage, and they were going to tell him about everything that were being seen. So Richard came. I'd never met the guy. And I were out this particular day in Danesdyke, taking my dog for a walk with wife. And I get a phone call from him. Paul, I don't want to do it, and he's come a long way, and would you talk to him? So I'd literally jumped in my vehicle and drove through onto the wolds, and I did an interview with Richard off the cuff, and we used a lot of footage that I'd got, and it displayed anybody wants to type it in, find Richard D. Hall, Paul Sinclair, and you'll see some footage that I'd been filming up there. But that guy were a prime example. The activity up there is phenomenal. I've been told about activity that's happening up there. I wouldn't say as we speak, because that would be wrong, but very recent. There's a lot of strange stuff, and you get the cryptid sightings around this area as well. Around there's a place called Forden, which is very close. We're literally half a mile away, little village. And when I say little, I think it's about 4 houses. So it's Forden. And then you've got foxholes, where I documented the guy travelling home towards Hull, and he claimed that this huge, but no, it weren't bipedal, it were on all fours running alongside of his Jaguar car. I don't know if anybody's heard me talk about that, to the car chaser, and he just looked, and it was there. He couldn't understand on a dark sort of unlit road, bit of moonlight, how this thing were running outside of his car and looking at him. Said it had fangs as big as his thumbs. It's just crazy.
I've heard a similar one. Winter Hill, exactly the same. Running along the side of a car that was going down a country lane. This guy reckoned he was doing probably about 40 mile an hour, something like that, through the old country lanes and that.
Yeah.
And he said this thing was running at the side of him, keeping up with him. So it's obviously something in it if it's been seen in different areas like that. That's it must be quite disconcerting as well, that, to be honest.
Well, good God, yeah. I mean, it absolutely frightened this guy to death, and there's so many. I mean, and it kind of makes you wonder. There's a hill going up towards Hummonby, just out of Flixton, where we get these accounts of what we've called the Flixton. Well, not what we've called the Flixton werewolf. And it's called Whitegate Hill. And there's 2 young women driving down Whitegate Hill back home to their home in a place called Muston, and which is only a mile away from Flixton. And this thing literally jumped into the road in one leap, stopped, kind of froze for a second, and then were gone. But the point they described it as looking like the werewolf from Harry Potter. But the point I'm trying to get at, are these things that stupid? That there's one car on an unlit road and it just happens to land in middle of the road in front of that car? Or is there motive to what they're doing? You know, there's one car driving through Foxholes, which is the village where the car chaser thing, what we wrote about in Truth Rule 3. And this thing happens to be running at the side of his car. You know, what is the purpose? What would be the purpose of this stupid animal landing in front of a car and then bounding off? West Garth at Caton, which is not far from where these two, Kelly and her sister, had this experience. West Garth, there's a guy driving there with his partner in car. It's quite built up. It's onto the cars, the Flixton Lake bed. But there's all bungalows down the right-hand side. Peripheral vision, he catches sight of something coming down the side of a bungalow. It kind of jumps to front at garden. He says, and in the next leap, it's in the middle of the road, and then it's gone. This is literally a mile and a half from where them girls saw it. But young women saw it. Was calling them girls, them young women. And he described it as having really short, thin hair that you could sort of see the skin through, and looking wrong, all very fast, but just disjointed, just all wrong, just like the ladies described. And is it somewhat resident to area? Well, it's got to be by virtue of the fact that they're all seeing it in a similar thing in a close proximity. But what is it? What is it? It's got me beat.
Who knows? Really, it's maybe that's what Spring-Heeled Jack was all those years ago in Liverpool and in London, something similar to that,
Did these artists try to replicate what Spring-Heeled Jack did and things, and it just weren't possible? The feats that this guy, this I don't know what he was.
This thing, jumping over buildings and all sorts. Well, last question for you, Paul. Is there going to be a Truth Proof 5?
There will be, I've already got a kind of a folder on laptop full of information, but I'm probably going to wait at least another year, not because I want to gather more information. It's just, like I said before, a lifetime of knocking nails in wood and then 5 years just writing 5 books. They're not great volumes, people. It's not Britannica, but it's vast difference to what you've been doing all your life. So there will be another one, without a doubt. So
I found my second book more difficult than the first one, I must admit, even though there's probably more in it, and it's probably more diverse. So I can fully understand what you mean by that. You sometimes need to have a little bit of a break and
saturated,
and because you become saturated. But well, keep up the good work, mate. I mean, we
will do.
A kindred spirit over the Pennines is always somebody good to talk to.
Craig, like you've been on our live stream twice now, and no doubt you'll do that again. And it's always great to talk. So thank you very much for allowing me.
No problem. Where can people contact you, Paul, just in case they don't know?
The email address is Paul Sinclair, all lowercase, ILF. Paul Sinclair, ILF @gmail.com. I nearly said ILF UFO at gmail.com. And the website is truthproof.uk. The paperback books are on for sale on the website. They're no longer on Amazon, but the Kindles are on Amazon.
Okay.
And thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for coming on again, Paul. It's been great. Take care. Thank you.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You can visit my website at www.craigbryant.co.uk. Paranormal Pendle will return, and remember to keep watching the shadows.